Hey guys, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a warning here. James and I decided to take a break this week, so we are going to play the video from the second week while I was on vacation that I never uploaded because I'm a lazy, stupid bastard. So here is it. Please ignore, obviously, all of the references to date, time, and me being on vacation, and keep in mind that, we are awesome. So there you go. All right, enjoy, guys. Thanks. Make sure you like, comment, and all those things that we ask you to do. Thanks. Okay, bye. Hello, today is February 1st, 2013, and you're listening to I Think You Think, a podcast that puts a new spin on debate and discussion. I'm Justin, and on the other side of my computer screen is James.
Howdy, folks.
It's not February 1st, though.
It is
isn't,
for us.
in
It's
fact.
not for them.
It is not. No, you are listening to this on a different day, March 6th, I believe, if I remember correctly.
That would be our record date, but it probably won't. It'll be like March 8th is when the first half of this episode will air. So it's March 8th,
Yes,
everybody.
it's March 8th
Don't worry.
or it might
You
be
didn't.
later. It
You
might be
didn't.
like 10 years later and you've come back to listen to our podcast to remember things way back then.
It's possible, but you did not go back in time, no matter what happened.
Yes, but anyway, I am Justin still, regardless of when you're listening. And I think I already said this, but on the other side of my computer screen is James.
Howdy, folks.
And we're your hosts. We carry no credentials worth noting, and we can't tell time, evidently, or the date, or when we're actually playing. So, I Think You Think is a podcast that focuses on what we, your hosts, think, but also what you think. Too many times we spend debates and discussions talking past one another and not enough time trying to learn and understand why someone thinks what they think. This is what makes I Think You Think different, because we are focused on why people think the way that they do and why we think the way that we do. James and I believe that the forum of ideas should be open to everyone, and everyone should have the opportunity to challenge and be challenged by ideas. We are not here to pass judgment, but merely discuss ideas and topics. This podcast, first and foremost, is a conversation between us and hopefully you. Feel free to email us, follow us on Facebook for future podcasts, and follow us on Tumblr for links relevant to this podcast and all previous podcasts and all future podcasts. The links for each of these can be found in the underbar of this video. I Think You Think is produced by StolenArts Productions and is recorded live at Fisher International Studios. Definitely not one of my best intros.
No, actually, I think we've been kind of going downhill with it, but it's okay. It makes them all unique. It makes them all that much more interesting. And, I think when I listen to this sometime on March 8th, which today is, then I will smile and fondly remember this time. So,
And I will be happy knowing that I am, in fact, still in the UK and still enjoying every single day here, or there, here, whatever. But I will be back to record the next show the following Wednesday, so March 13th or 14th is when we're recording it. I don't know. I don't have a calendar in front of me, and I'm too tired to look it up.
it's all approximate, but yeah, it's the 13th.
Okay, well, there you go. But next week will be not a pre-recorded show. It will be another one of our live shows that comes out days after.
And there's a very small chance that Justin will have a slightly silly accent from his time overseas.
Probably greater than a small chance. I might even try, just, for the hell of it. Anyway, we have a couple of fun topics today. This is kind of a lighter show. Whereas last week was sort of serious, this one's a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun. And so we are definitely looking forward to hearing back from you guys on what you think about these. Which one were we going to start with for part one?
I say we start with ghosts.
Ghosts.
Spooky poltergeists, entities, whatever you would like to speak of them as.
The undead.
Ooh, possibly. See, now we're getting outside of ghosts, though, because now an undead can be, corporeal and have like a body, like a vampire or something. And we're not getting all Twilight in this. So let's just go with ghosts and leave it at that.
And yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so ghosts. Where do you want to start?
Well,
What's your beliefs in ghosts?
my beliefs in ghosts. Oh man, I don't flat out believe in ghosts, but I definitely believe that there's things out there that we don't understand. Um, I've watched Ghost Hunters, watched it a bunch. And most episodes it's a whole bunch of like minor silly things, and I don't know how much of that is like real and how much of it is TV, really, when you get down to it. But there's definitely some stuff that I've seen on there that makes you think. But I still sit with that thought of, is this just, made for TV hype? I have heard stories from friends, people that I trust, weird things that, they've seen or heard or that have occurred to them. So I guess in a general sense, I believe there's something there. I don't know if it's what we um, prescribe it to, if we, it is, the souls of lost loved ones and things like that. But I do believe there's, science has only brought us so far, and there's still some stuff out there that we're not quite sure what it is. And sometimes that's interpreted as things that we would refer to as ghosts.
Okay, fair enough. I do
What about,
know.
yes.
I was going to say, as someone who used to believe in ghosts, I don't believe in ghosts anymore. But I do enjoy when my wife and I went to San Francisco for our honeymoon. We went on a ghost walk tour, which was loads of fun. The guy who ran it was actually he had been on the Learning Channel, the Discovery Channel probably did a small, special on. He was part of a special on ghost walking tours and things like that, and so that was what kind of led us to it. And it was a really small group. It was my wife and I and one other person, whereas normally this guy does like 20, 25, 30 people on these ghost walk tours. So we got a unique sort of experience where it was just the three of us and this, for lack of a better term, nationally acclaimed ghost walk tour guide. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoy those kinds of things more for the historicity of it, the stories about where these ghosts come from, and the lives that their the supposed corporeal bodies had. But this guy, he had said something that really kind of resounded with me, especially at that time when I did believe in ghosts. Was he talked about that he thought ghosts were not so much as a spiritual entity that exists beyond death, in so much that you die and then you continue to exist as this ghost form, sort of like in the movie The Others. And I don't want to give away too much. Did you ever see that?
I don't think so, but maybe it sounds familiar, but it's not. I'm not recalling any storyline
Okay,
at all.
and I'm not going to get into it because it's kind of got like a very M. Night Shyamalan kind of twist to it, and so I don't really want to give too much away. But it's basically about ghosts and the existence afterlife. Anyway, so his idea is that when you die, you don't exist on as these ghosts. What happens is during your life, something happens, something that is a scenario or a situation in which an immense amount of emotion is given over or portrayed, or violent deaths, very scary things happening, or very happy moments in people's lives, in which those emotions kind of imprint themselves on locations or places or things like that. And it's not so much that this, woman who died on the eve of her wedding night, who people see strolling down the beachside or something, is actually that woman anymore, but that intense emotion that she felt imprinted itself on that location in that moment of time, and we are just looking at reflections of that imprintation, if
Right.
that's even really a word. And so that's kind of what, and that's what we're seeing, and it's a form of energy. And since other energies can interact with it and overpower it, things like the sun, which is a very very powerful spot source of energy will almost cancel it out, and that's why you don't see ghosts during the day and things like that. I mean, it's all very woo, his explanation, but it sounded really neat. And so I still like it. I like that explanation. I don't think that that's what happens. I don't believe that any evidence supports that. But it's a very concise, interesting way to kind of look at it. And there were some magic tricks and things that he did along the way, and I knew that they were magic tricks. I recognized them as magic tricks that he claimed were ghosts working, within this tour and everything. It kind of helped that we weren't in a group of 25 people, and so I could watch very closely what he was doing.
Right.
But I mean, even then, when I believed in ghosts, I was still a very skeptical person, and so even shows like those ghost hunter shows, those always drive me crazy. My wife loves watching them. She finds them hilarious, but she also loves watching like ancient aliens and things like that.
Right.
And so she enjoys those things. I just find them appalling because I don't see it as science in any regard. It's just you put a bunch of people with electromagnetic meters and night vision cameras in a dark house, and then they jump at every, sound and quote unquote feeling that they have about something.
Right. Well, okay. So if you don't believe in ghosts at all, what do you think people that claim to have seen ghosts, or especially in repetitive instances, what are those things to you? Like what is an explanation to you?
Well, like I would probably say that there's two kind of answers for that. One would be the purely sort of argumentative, scientific answer, which is it's not my responsibility to come up with an explanation for something. I'm not the one making the claim. They're making the claim that it's a ghost. It's their responsibility for showing some sort of evidence outside of, well, I just had this experience. They would have to demonstrate it in some way, have repeatable tests. So there's the more argumentative, which is it's not my responsibility to explain it. However, I'm not really interested in that. I'm more interested in like having sort of a conversation about it. And so I would probably say that our minds are very good pattern detecting machines. We're excellent at determining patterns. And in addition to that, there are lots of things that happen that we assign agency to. We say that it's because it's beneficial for us to assign agency to something than to assume that there's no agency behind it. And what I mean by agency is you assume that there's a mind or a thought process or something behind an action happening. If my blinds across the living room suddenly fell from the ceiling, it's easier. I have one of two options. I could assume, oh, it's just an accident. They happen to fall out and there's nothing wrong and I don't need to worry about it. Or two, I could think, oh my gosh, something has interacted with those blinds and made them fall and now I need to worry about it. It goes back to, probably a few million years ago when our ancestors were walking across the plains of Africa and there was a sound that came from a bush. It would be beneficial to assume that there was something dangerous in the bush that made that sound and to run from it, even though it would expend calories and could potentially prevent you from getting a drink of water or, finish cooking your meal. But by fleeing from that, you survive to pass on your genes. But that's my explanation is that people assign agency to things that don't necessarily need agency assigned to them.
Okay, so what about you mentioned blinds falling. What if somebody has seen an apparition?
The stories that typically associate themselves with I saw my grandmother standing at the foot of my bed or, something came into my room are typically associated with when someone is going to sleep, falling asleep. They're also associated sometimes with people. Um, hang on a second. My daughter, I can hear her crying upstairs.
Okay.
I will be right back. We're at just about 10-ish, 12, 13 minutes, so I'll be right back.
Okay.
Brandon, that's not helping. Trying to help, though, okay? All right, you can hang out down here, but you got to stay quiet, okay? All right, my daughter's gonna join us from here for a while.
Okay.
Um, where were we?
Um, you were just saying, talking about how a lot of times it happens when people are falling asleep.
Yes, there are especially when people are falling asleep, your brain does also. And I'm not a neurologist or anything, but from the information that the kind of research that I've done, I'm trying to think of some of the names. I think Lawrence Krauss, if I remember correctly, definitely like Sam Harris, who is a neurobiologist. Um, they your brain does kind of funny things a lot of times when it's in that state of on the verge of falling asleep. Um, so sometimes people who have these experiences, um, there's it's I guess I would probably put it in the sense that if I told you I saw a dragon fly over my house this afternoon, and and then and you said, well, I don't believe that dragons fly over people's homes, or I don't believe that there are dragons, and I would say, well, what other explanation could there be? What other explanation other than a dragon flying over my house that I saw?
That's a pretty extreme example, though. In comparison to, a misty apparition, a full-blown dragon flying over your house compared to, that which is a ghost, or, could people prescribe to being ghosts? It's a much, like, literally bigger thing and much more gigantic and extreme thing. There aren't people, I mean, maybe there are not a significant number of people who actually believe that dragons exist in the modern day world, but there are a significant number of people that do believe that ghosts do exist.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, like, using that as the example, it brings it so far into the fantasy beyond what, ghosts may or may not be. I'm not saying I believe in them. I'm just sort of devil's advocate here a little bit. To say seeing a dragon flying over your house is comparable to someone maybe seeing something they might prescribe to a ghost is just it's a huge leap between A and B there.
Well, I can understand that it's definitely a huge leap. I think a lot of times I use examples like that to draw the difference between to show how somebody asking me to give an explanation for what they saw. I saw X. Can you explain that? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The dragon is it's very much. I mean, if I ask you, aside from it being an extreme example, if I ask you to explain what else could it be, what are the first kind of thoughts that go through your mind?
Mental help,
Okay, so
you know, drugs, you know, yeah, like did you just wake up? Are you sure you were even awake?
right.
You know,
Those are the same sorts of things that go through my mind when someone says, I saw a ghost, or, my grandmother, who's been dead for 10 years, came and visited me last night in my, in my room. You can't explain that, or how do you explain that, or something to that effect. And my thoughts are, well, it's which is more likely that a ghost of your dead grandmother showed up and did it and did speak to you, which I'm not saying didn't happen, but which is more likely that happened, or you were having some sort of a mental episode, or you weren't actually even awake, or there was some kind of a chemical imbalance going on in your brain in which you thought that this was going on, or you were even having like a psychotic episode at some point. And we know people have psychotic episodes. We know that people have um, out of body experiences, and they're explained by brain chemistry. And there was a guy who did some research with what's called I think they call it the God helmet. And it's had kind of mixed sort of peer review on it. Some of it's there's so much variation in it, but basically he's got this rigged up bicycle helmets with magnetics all over,
okay.
and they bombard your brain with magnetic waves, and it creates, for different people, different things happen. But some people do experience these out of body experiences. They have these experiences in which they feel like someone else is in the room, someone is watching them. They feel disconnected from their body, and these are all things that are the same types of things that are reported through by people who have alien abductions, people who say they see or experience ghosts, experience out of body, those types of things.
So do you, and I don't want to get too far into the broader subject matter here that I'm about to bring up, because it's probably a whole nother podcast or two. But do you just patently, isn't it? Do you, as a general rule, not believe in any psychic phenomenon?
I, as a general rule, believe in things that can be demonstrated. And the psychic phenomenon, from the research that I've done, they are not better than pure chance. Now, we're not talking about people doing cold readings.
No, that's not psychic. That's
Talking about, like, I have a deck of cards. I want you to take all of the aces out. There's a random deck of cards. I want you to use your psychic powers to look at these cards and take out the aces. And statistics says that you should, even if I separated all of them by suit, if I separated them by suit, then your chances to draw the ace is 1 in 13 by suit.
right.
And then multiplied by, 1 in 13 times 1 in 13 times whatever.
Right.
And so there's a specific statistical chance that someone will choose the correct ones. There's even a chance that someone could choose all four. But when they do these studies, these large studies, they find that, the quote unquote best psychics do little better than chance, and some even worse than chance. Now, obviously, a lot of the psychics have explanations for why that's happening, why they aren't connecting, and then have anecdotal evidence of, well, I predicted this guy had cancer, and and he did end up with cancer, or something to that effect. Now, I'm not saying that every psychic out there is a charlatan. I think that there probably are psychics, well, people who claim to be psychics out there who are charlatans. But I do actually believe that there are people out there who believe that they have psychic powers. Uh, but I don't. The evidence doesn't seem to suggest that psychic phenomenon actually takes place.
Okay, and we don't want to get too far into that because we're really talking about ghosts. Um, but I just wanted to know as a general rule because it sort of puts it in context, because I believe that there it's a strong likelihood that some of that stuff, and there are definitely tons of charlatans, and I don't know if I believe in psychics. That is a murky ground for me, and it just when you say psychic, I think charlatan. I really do, but non-explained phenomenon like um, when somebody who lives in California wakes up breathless at the moment that a close loved one died in Maryland. You know what I mean? At the exact same moment.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that are a little more just sort of not a constant power that someone has, like a psychic would claim, but like instances of unexplained phenomenon. I do believe that things like that happen. They probably don't happen as they definitely don't happen as often as people think because a lot of times stuff is just coincidence. But I do believe that there's more than what we know, more than what we're able to prove or quantify as of yet.
Well,
Um,
not to cut you off, I would agree with you that there are things out there in this universe that we don't know about yet. Um, I believe it's in Hamlet when Hamlet is quotes, and I'm gonna destroy this quote, so I apologize. In it, there are more things on heaven and earth than are taught about in your something. I can't remember what it is that is taught about in your uh, something Horatio. I can't
yeah,
part that quote. That's horrible. Uh,
but I think everybody gets the gist, and I get the gist.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, like I think we talked about this in the last podcast we actually recorded, which would be the one that got released in very early February, or maybe it was the one before that. That I lost track of my thought trying to track down dates. Um, yeah, I lost my train of thought there. Maybe
okay,
we'll edit that out, or maybe we won't. It depends on how funny it is when we're listening to it. Anyways, I do think there are unexplained things. There are things that we're just we don't know yet. If you look back to 100 years ago, what is science now was science fiction, if not impossible then. If you go back to 1912, 1913, the way they lived compared to the way we live now, like you would not be able to take someone from this time, at least not the average person, the average American will say, and put them in 1913 and expect them to actually have any applicable skills.
sure.
I mean, they wouldn't be able to survive, and vice versa is true, of course, as well. Um, but the amount of things that have been developed that would have been considered impossible 100 years ago are some of that stuff is just old technology. There's people that are in their people that are at the end of their life, or maybe we'll say retirement age, 60 years. So they're born in the 50s. That stuff that was impossible in 1912 is stuff they've lived with all their life, and it's like it's old technology. It's old hat. Everybody's always had that. It's not a big deal. So just looking at science and progress in that way, you know, and not just from a technological standpoint, but from a scientific standpoint, there's been a lot of things that have been discovered as well. What will we know 100 years from now?
Sure.
Maybe some of that will explain away. I'm sure some of that will explain away a lot of things that, would fall under the realm of mysticism or, psychic phenomenon. But maybe some will bring something to light. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I just have like a hunch, I guess is probably the most credit I could give to my thoughts on the subject. Um, but I just feel like there maybe is something more out there. I don't know if it's ghost. I don't know if it's the emotional memories imprinted on an area. or if it's just that people are kind of crazy sometimes.
Well, this is what I would say. Um, let us assume for a moment that 20 or 30 years ago, science develops some kind of tool for detecting ghosts. Okay, forget the science actually behind it, but let's say 20 years from now they develop a tool for detecting ghosts. We prove or at least show heavy evidence that ghosts exist, or in whatever form that we want to kind of talk about. But let's say 20 years from now we show evidence ghosts exist, and people from this time start saying, we were saying ghosts existed 20 years ago. Your science is finally catching up to us. This is not unlike someone 150 years ago saying that the atom is made up of subatomic particles. These subatomic particles are the proton, the neutron, and the electron. And people say, no, 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 that's crazy talk. And he says, well, I think it's true. I have a hunch. I believe that this is true. And what it comes down to is the person who's talking about the atom being made up of subatomic particles and the people who are talking about the ghosts existing, it comes down to good reasons for believing something. If your reason for believing in something is a hunch or a thought or an idea, or I think it just sounds right, that's a less reasonable reason for believing in something than evidence to support it. Now, ghosts, if we suddenly develop a ghost, you're okay, honey. If we suddenly develop a ghost detecting tool, then, and we can then show evidence that ghosts exist, then that would be the time to then believe that ghosts exist, not before. Before, it's just an unexplained phenomenon. It's not ghosts. You're just labeling it ghosts.
Right, right. I mean, and there isn't any hard evidence to prove
Right.
that they do exist.
And that's, from my perspective, my way of seeing things is until evidence exists for something, there's not a reason to believe it. Now, I will entertain the thoughts, and I entertain the thoughts about ghosts. When I was a child, I entertained them to a degree that I was much more frightened of them. And now I'm going through that same sort of scenario with my son, in which he is afraid of certain fictitious characters, fictitious creatures that don't exist, and I will tell him they don't exist, and I will ask him questions about it. Have you ever seen them? Oh, I've seen them in the game, but is everything real in games? And we talk about it, but it makes no difference to him. He'll still, when he comes downstairs, if he's down here by himself, and he turns the lights off, he tears up those stairs as fast as he can because it scares him.
Right, and that's the imagination of a child.
Right.
I mean, and that's probably very common amongst, a large number of children. Yeah, I don't know. I find it to be an interesting subject matter to read about, to have conversations with people about, especially people that, whether true or false, do believe they've had experience.
Sure.
I've definitely enjoyed watching that show Ghost Hunters, and I have seen some things on there that make me go, what was that? I'm not sure what that was. And I like that kind of mystery that it is. So maybe that's part of what is my hunch, that I think it's neat.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of cool. And, maybe that part makes me want it to exist. But at the same time, there's so many people that do believe, and this is not something that will hold water with you, but there's so many people that do believe that it makes me a little more confident in the possibility.
Sure. I mean, like I understand people feel confident when more people believe something. It doesn't necessarily make something true.
Definitely not.
But it does make them feel more confident about their beliefs. And to kind of wrap up, because I think we're running out of time for this first topic, I will say that and I hope I'm not stepping on toes, that wide-eyed wonderment that you get from watching shows like this and makes you wonder, I wonder what that is. That's awesome. I love that feeling. I would, the difference between you and me is you might associate that more quickly with, the potential for ghosts, and I would associate it that more with, that's really cool. I wonder what's doing that.
Yeah.
As opposed to labeling it off the cuff or offhand. I would say there's a phenomenon there, you know. But what that is still requires more research. So, yes, I agree. There are things we don't know.
So I think we have completely settled the argument on ghosts.
Yep. Forever.
That's it. This is going to be the definitive work.
Yeah.
They're going to cancel Ghost Hunters. It's all over now.
All from now on, psychics will be referencing this show, on both sides.
You're just gonna, and then in 20 years, that device is going to get made, and they're going to turn the whole thing around.
Yep. As science often does.
And we do have a second subject. Oh, but you guys can't hear that now, can you, folks?
Nope. You'll be hearing that on Monday, and that will be my last day in the UK.
Which is nowhere near Florida, which we established previously.
Many, many weeks ago.
Yes. Which will be the 11th. It'll be the 11th.
All right. Well, we found a calendar.
Well, I have the list of our podcasts here, and I'm just doing some simple math. But yes, it's roughly a calendar.
Okay. All right. This is where the part one of podcast 14 ends then. Thanks, guys, for listening. Continue to share, comment, like the videos, listen to my daughter whimpering in the background, and hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you're still listening. Hopefully you are passing this on to your friends and letting them know about it, because the more people we get listening, the more people we have talking about it, the more kind of content we can develop. And as you have seen, we do have guests. We are continuing to look for more guests, and hopefully maybe some of you are already in the queue to be guests on our show. So, because we want to hear from you. James, any kind of final words here on this part?
Yeah, anyone out there that's listening that's interested in being a guest, just, contact whoever you're friends with on, either me or Justin if you're friends with us, or contact us via the email if you're not already friends with us on Facebook, and we can talk about it and see if we can find a subject that would be good for all of us. Otherwise, everybody, don't hold your breath, but we'll see you on Monday.